Let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly alone, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually untouched by anyone else's voice or presence? Not scrolling, not waiting for a reply, not wondering what someone else thinks of you, just completely present with yourself. For most people, that kind of aloneness feels terrifying. For a few, it feels like freedom. And for those who walk the Stoic path, it becomes something else entirely, a superpower. We live in a world that glorifies connection. From the time we're children, we're taught that being alone is a problem to be solved, that happiness means finding someone, that success means being surrounded, that solitude means you've failed at something. Movies, songs, social media, it's all built on the same assumption. You're not whole until someone else completes you. But what if that idea is wrong? What if solitude isn't a weakness? What if it's a strength, an edge, a space of transformation? What if being single isn't a limitation, but an invitation? You see, the Stoics weren't interested in conventional wisdom. They didn't live to fit in. They lived to be free. And one of the most powerful ideas they gave the world is this: the person who learns to be alone without fear, the person who needs nothing from others to be whole, that person is untouchable, not emotionally numb, not disconnected, just centered, rooted, independent. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, yet he returned again and again to moments of stillness and solitude, reminding himself not to depend on praise, affection, or attention. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that if your happiness depends on anything outside of your control, especially the presence or approval of other people, you've already surrendered your peace. Seneca, one of the most brilliant minds in history, wrote that true friendship comes not from dependence, but from two complete individuals choosing to walk together, not needing one another to feel valuable. So here's the challenge. Can you build a life that stands on its own? Can you wake up in the morning and know who you are? Not because someone else affirms it, but because you've forged that identity in the fire of solitude. Can you create a world within yourself that is so full of clarity, strength, and direction that no absence can shake it? That's what this video is about. This isn't going to be a surface-level pep talk about learning to love yourself or enjoying your own company. This is a deep dive into the Stoic mindset, a philosophy built on courage, clarity, discipline, and personal sovereignty. This is about unlocking the hidden power of the single life, not as a waiting room before a relationship, but as a stage for self-mastery. Because when you strip away the noise, the need, the constant chase for external validation, what you're left with is your true self. And that self, when cultivated with intention and reason, becomes a force no one can ignore and no one can control. We're going to talk about what solitude really means, how it can become the forge of identity, creativity, and resilience, why people who embrace it live with more purpose, more freedom, and more peace, and how you can begin using your single life not to fill time, not to escape loneliness, but to become someone unbreakable, untouchable, and deeply grounded in who you are. Because here's the truth. There is no version of your best life that doesn't require you to stand alone at some point. There is no real strength that doesn't grow out of silence. And there is no lasting happiness that doesn't begin with knowing how to be with yourself, not as a punishment, but as a gift. Being single is not second best. It's not a placeholder. It's not a compromise. When lived with intention, it is one of the most powerful chapters of your life. It's a time to build, to focus, to rise. And most people waste it chasing noise. You don't have to. You can use it to change everything. So if you're single right now, or even just feel alone in some part of your life, I want you to know something. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not waiting for your story to begin. You are standing at the threshold of your superpower, if you're willing to walk through the silence and step into yourself fully. Let's get into it. Let's explore why being alone, when lived through the lens of Stoic wisdom, can become the greatest advantage of your life. Let's turn solitude into strength. Let's reclaim the single life as a path not just of peace, but of power. Let's begin by redefining solitude, because if you're going to make it your superpower, you first need to understand what it actually is. We've been taught to fear solitude, not in obvious ways, but subtly. We've been conditioned to see being alone as something to escape, something to fix, something that signals failure. Spend too many weekends without plans and people start to worry. Take a trip by yourself and someone will ask if you're okay. Don't rush into a relationship and you'll be told you're falling behind. And that quiet voice in your head might even start to agree. But what if solitude isn't emptiness? What if it's space? What if it's not isolation, but incubation? What if solitude is not the absence of connection, but the presence of clarity? The Stoics had no fear of being alone. In fact, they pursued it. Not because they didn't love people, but because they knew something most people forget. The person who can stand alone is the person who's strongest in a crowd. And the person who needs constant noise, attention and company to feel alive has already handed over their power. Autarkia, that's the Greek word for self-sufficiency. It doesn't mean being cold or distant, it means being whole. It means being enough. And the Stoics saw it as a virtue. A man or woman who needs nothing from the outside to feel full on the inside is dangerous, in the best way. But we've lost touch with that. We're so connected, so available, so distracted that we rarely experience uninterrupted aloneness. Our minds are never still. Our attention is always hijacked. And in that chaos, we forget who we are. So the first gift of solitude is clarity. When you sit in silence, when you remove the noise, you begin to see your own thoughts again. Not the ones you inherited, not the ones you were told to believe, but the raw, unfiltered truth that lives inside you. That's where your direction lives. That's where your values come into focus. That's where your voice grows louder than the world's. And that clarity brings strength. Because when you know who you are, you stop chasing affirmation. You stop molding yourself to fit in. You stop comparing your path to someone else's timeline. You begin to walk your life with confidence, not arrogance, but grounded assurance. Think about this. When you're constantly surrounded by others, even those you love, their thoughts, their needs, their judgments, their expectations, those things shape you. Not always in bad ways, but in invisible ways. You begin to absorb their priorities. You begin to carry their fears. You begin to live in their reflection. And if you never step away, even for a while, you'll never know what part of your life is truly yours. That's why solitude is essential. Not as an escape, but as a return to center, a return to self. You don't need to go off-grid or move into a cabin in the woods. You just need to create space, uninterrupted time where you are fully present with your own mind. No screens, no noise, just you, and at first it might be uncomfortable. Because silence reveals things you've been avoiding. It brings forward the doubts, the fears, the memories, the dreams you've buried under busyness. But stay there. Breathe, let it rise, because what you're feeling isn't loneliness. It's truth. It's your mind clearing out the clutter. It's your soul asking you to listen again. And once you learn to be still, once you learn to enjoy your own presence, you'll never again feel desperate for someone else's. You'll no longer fear time alone. You'll begin to crave it. Not because you're antisocial, but because you've discovered how rich solitude can be. Now let's talk about the second part of this gift, the power of inner dialogue. Most people spend their lives reacting. They wake up and check their phone. They listen to the voices of others before they've even had a chance to hear their own. They walk into the world without checking in with themselves, and as a result, their inner voice becomes quiet, confused, and fragmented. But the Stoics knew better. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every single day. His meditations weren't intended for anyone else. They were a conversation with his own soul. He was the emperor of the most powerful empire in the world, yet he still made time to sit in silence and ask, "Am I living according to my principles? Am I acting out of fear or wisdom? Am I focused on what matters or distracted by what doesn't?" That's not weakness, that's strength. That's leadership. That's what inner dialogue can do. And the only way to develop that inner dialogue is through solitude, through making time to think deeply, to reflect honestly, to question everything, including yourself. You don't need to write pages every day. Even 10 minutes of journaling, even a quiet walk without music, can reconnect you with your core. Because when you're always surrounded by external voices, your inner voice fades. You begin to act for approval. You begin to think in slogans. You start to lose the quiet, steady pulse of your own wisdom. But when you spend time alone, and I mean really alone, no distractions, no performative reflection, just present, honest solitude, your voice comes back. And when it does, you'll start to recognize patterns in your thoughts. You'll start to hear what you actually believe, what you actually want, what you actually fear. And once you see it, you can work with it. You can sharpen it. You can reshape it. That's how confidence is built, not by being loud, not by being perfect, but by knowing yourself so well that nothing external can destabilize you. And here's the truth most people never hear. You don't need someone else to tell you who you are. You don't need a relationship to validate your worth. You don't need applause to know your voice matters. You just need to hear yourself clearly. And that only happens when you make space to listen. So if you want to become unshakable, if you want to build a life rooted in purpose and guided by reason, start here. Start with solitude. Start with silence. Start by building a strong inner world that doesn't depend on who texts you back or who notices your progress. Because the person who can sit in silence and face their own thoughts without flinching, that person is already powerful. That person doesn't chase identity, they create it. They don't need the world to give them permission. They walk into the world already knowing who they are. And once you have that, you become the kind of person people are drawn to. Not because you need them, but because you carry something rare. The presence of someone who has been forged in quiet, who has chosen depth over distraction, who has learned to live from the inside out. Let's move into something that touches every part of your life. Emotional independence. Emotional independence doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people or cut yourself off from connection. It means you stop outsourcing your peace. It means your mood, your stability, your identity are no longer dependent on someone else's approval, attention, or presence. This is a hard truth, but one that the Stoics lived by. If your happiness depends on something you don't control, it will always be fragile. That includes people. That includes relationships. That includes the constant emotional roller coaster of trying to read someone else's mind, win their affection, or keep them from leaving. Average thinking says, if they love me, then I'm enough. Stoic thinking says, I am enough, and my peace is not for sale. When you're alone, you're given a rare opportunity to learn how to sit with your emotions without needing someone else to manage them for you. You learn how to regulate instead of react. You develop the skill of feeling fully without collapsing. And that's what emotional independence is. It's knowing that you can face grief, anxiety, loneliness, joy, excitement, everything, without needing someone to rescue you from it. Most people try to avoid this. They bounce from relationship to relationship, not because they love deeply, but because they can't face silence. They're terrified of being alone with sadness, so they run toward distraction. They fear being misunderstood, so they abandon themselves to become what others want. But when you live like that, you're not loving others, you're using them to regulate yourself. The Stoics taught that mastery over the self begins with mastering the passions. not in the sense of repressing emotions, but in the sense of refusing to let them govern your choices. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And many of our imagined fears, imagined rejections, imagined losses, they come from giving away the reins of our emotional life to someone else. So how do you build this habit of emotional independence? You begin with awareness. You sit with what you feel. You name it. You ask where it comes from. You don't judge it. You don't try to numb it. You get curious. Why am I feeling anxious? Is this from the present, or am I reliving something? Why am I so affected by this person's opinion? What am I really afraid of? These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary, because the moment you start owning your emotional landscape, you begin to reclaim power you didn't even know you had lost. And the best training ground for this is solitude. It's when you're alone that you notice the habits you've built. Do you run from your own thoughts? Do you scroll to escape a feeling? Do you long for a message just to feel seen? There's nothing wrong with wanting connection. The Stoics weren't against love, but they were against dependence. They knew that love, to be pure, must be freely given, not clung to out of fear. They knew that real connection grows from wholeness, not from emptiness. And that's your challenge. Use your solitude to become whole. Use it to build an inner strength so steady that no compliment can inflate you and no insult can deflate you. Use it to develop a kind of groundedness that allows you to enter relationships not as a beggar, but as a giver. Because the emotionally independent person isn't cold. They're powerful. They feel deeply, but they choose wisely. They don't suppress their heart, but they don't let it rule their mind. They don't need someone to make them okay, but they can still open themselves fully to love because their identity is not on the line. That's the paradox. The more emotionally independent you become, the more love you can give, because it's not tainted by fear. It's not about filling a hole, it's about sharing from overflow. And that kind of love, that kind of presence, it can only be born in solitude. Now let's shift into the fifth advantage, the mastery of time and energy. When you're single, you are in complete control of your schedule. That might sound obvious, but it's one of the most underestimated forms of power you'll ever have, because time is life. And most people, without realizing it, give huge chunks of their life away, not just to obligations, but to energy leaks. Relationships, even good ones, come with trade-offs. Compromise, coordination, communication, and that's fine. That's normal. But when you're alone, you get to decide what your days are made of. You get to choose when to wake, when to train, when to create, when to rest. You get to structure your life with brutal clarity and complete autonomy, and in that freedom lies extraordinary potential. Seneca wrote that people guard their money more carefully than their time, even though time is the one thing they can never earn back. He said, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And one of the greatest forms of waste is spending time on things that do not align with your goals, your values, your deeper mission. When you're single, that waste is easier to spot. There's no one to distract you with drama, no emotional energy tied up in other people's moods. You begin to see clearly, where is my time going? Where is my energy going? What am I building? And once you ask those questions honestly, you can start making real changes. You don't need permission. You don't need to explain. You can streamline your life to serve your purpose. You can cut what drains you. You can double down on what energizes you. You can spend an entire day doing what moves you closer to your goals, and no one will stop you. That's not loneliness, that's leverage. Solitude, when used well, becomes a kind of amplifier. It shows you exactly what you value. It reveals where you're wasting hours. It forces you to ask whether your habits are building your future or stealing it. And if you're willing to be honest, you'll come out the other side with a schedule that reflects your highest self, not just your impulses. You'll notice something else too. Your energy becomes sacred. You'll stop entertaining conversations that drain you. You'll stop attending events out of guilt. You'll stop spreading yourself thin for fear of missing out. You'll start asking, does this align with my mission? Does this serve the person I'm becoming? That's a rare mindset. And it's forged in solitude. It's forged in the quiet hours when you have space to think, to focus, to act. And the result? Momentum, discipline, flow. You begin to move through life not like someone drifting, but like someone driving. You stop hoping things will work out and you start shaping your time so that they do. So here's your challenge. While you're single, don't wait. Build the life, own the calendar, create the rhythm. Don't just manage your time, master it. And let your solitude become the training ground for energy, focus, and discipline that most people never touch. Because one day, if you choose to share your life with someone, they won't be meeting someone who waited. They'll be meeting someone who built, someone who shaped their days with intention, someone who has something powerful to give, not just affection, but direction, not just presence, but purpose. And that level of personal mastery, that starts now. It starts in solitude. It starts with you. Now let's go deeper, into something that separates the distracted from the focused, the drifting from the deliberate. The sixth advantage of the single life is this: solitude becomes the forge of purpose. Without space, you cannot find your why. Without silence, you cannot hear the deeper pull of your life. Most people never stop long enough to ask what they're truly here to do. They chase what's loud. They follow what's trending. They adopt the dreams handed to them by others. And so they live lives filled with motion but lacking direction. But when you're single, when you have solitude, you have access to something rare: uninterrupted alignment. Time to question, time to listen, time to refine. The Stoics believed that purpose wasn't something you discover once and carry forever. It's something you return to daily, something you sharpen like a blade. Marcus Aurelius asked himself constantly, am I living according to nature? Not nature as in trees and rivers, but the nature of his character. The nature of a human being meant to serve, to think, to act with reason and integrity. And how did he find that alignment? Through solitude, through stripping away the noise, through resisting the pull to be everything to everyone. That's what the single life offers you if you have the courage to use it. Not distraction, but depth. Not pressure, but potential. When you're alone, you can finally hear what your life is asking of you. You can revisit the core questions. What do I value? What am I good at? What breaks my heart? What fires me up? What is worth building, protecting, sacrificing for? These are not questions answered in passing. These are the questions of purpose, and they require space. Great people aren't great because they do a lot. They're great because they do the right things with consistency. And you don't get that kind of clarity by accident. You earn it in the quiet, in the waiting, in the solitary pursuit of truth. This isn't about ambition, it's about alignment. It's about living in a way that's true to your nature. It's about being so grounded in your purpose that you're no longer pulled in every direction by trends, people, or temporary emotions. And that level of clarity, it starts when you stop trying to fill the silence and start using it. When you live alone with intention, you start to see how many things you once did just to be liked, just to be accepted, just to feel busy. You start to realize how much energy you were spending on image instead of integrity, and you begin to let it go. Because your eyes are fixed on something bigger, something inward, something eternal, something yours. So if you're in a season of being single, don't rush through it. Don't treat it like a waiting room. Treat it like a workshop. Treat it like the time when your purpose stops being an idea and starts becoming a framework. Ask the big questions. Sit with them. Write them out. Revisit them. And build your life around the answers that stand the test of silence. Because once you've found your why, you become unstoppable. You don't burn out easily. You don't follow blindly. You don't bend to the world's shallow demands. You're rooted. You're clear. And the life you build from that kind of clarity isn't just successful, it's meaningful, it's resilient. It's yours. Now let's talk about what happens when you take that clarity and do something with it. The seventh advantage of being alone is that solitude becomes the birthplace of creation. Think about the moments when humanity has been pushed forward, new ideas, powerful books, game-changing discoveries. They weren't born in the crowd, they were born in silence. In rooms where the door was closed, in minds that weren't afraid of stillness. Great creators know this. Writers, inventors, philosophers, leaders, they all understand that solitude isn't a break from the work. It is the work. It's where the sparks form. It's where chaos organizes itself into structure. It's where noise turns into clarity and clarity turns into action. And you don't have to be a philosopher or artist to tap into this. You just have to be someone who wants to live a creative life, a life that builds, shapes, contributes, a life that doesn't just consume but produces something real. But here's the tension. Most people don't create because they never stop consuming. Their minds are too full of other people's opinions to hear their own voice. They're too reactive to think deeply. Too distracted to feel inspired. And that's why solitude matters, because it's in solitude that your original ideas start to take shape. The Stoics lived this. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just a ruler, he was a writer. His deepest insights didn't come from war councils or political debates. They came from stolen moments of silence, often in the early morning or late at night, when he could reflect, refine, and write. That journal, never meant for anyone's eyes, became one of the most enduring philosophical texts of all time. What are you creating in your solitude? What's trying to be born in you that's been drowned out by the noise? You don't need to have a massive audience to create something meaningful. You just need honesty. You need focus. You need the courage to be alone long enough to hear what your soul is whispering. And once you do, you have to act on it. That's where the real work begins. Maybe it's a project you've been delaying. Maybe it's a message you need to write. Maybe it's a vision you haven't shared yet. Whatever it is, your solitude is the perfect place to begin, not because it's comfortable, but because it's clean. No distractions. No expectations, just you and the blank page, the quiet plan, the idea that's been waiting to come alive. And here's the beautiful irony. The more you create in solitude, the more connected you become. Not in the shallow sense of likes or views, but in the deeper sense of contributing something real. You're no longer chasing connection, you're building it. You're offering the world something it didn't have before. Something born not from pressure, but from purpose. So the next time you find yourself alone, don't ask, what should I do to fill this space? Ask instead, what is ready to come through me here? Use your solitude. Don't waste it numbing. Don't escape it. Build something in it. Create something from it. Because when you do, you transform from someone who's merely alone into someone who is actively shaping reality from within. And that's not just power. That's legacy. That's what solitude was always meant to be, a place not just of peace, but of production, a place where you don't just find yourself, but where you begin to leave something behind. Let's move into the eighth advantage of the single life, how solitude strengthens your relationships. That might sound contradictory at first. How can being alone help you connect more deeply with others? But this is one of the most important truths the Stoics understood. You can't give what you haven't cultivated. You can't love someone well if you haven't first learned how to stand well on your own. You can't bring depth to a relationship if you don't have depth within yourself. And this is where solitude becomes a kind of training ground. It teaches you to stop looking for someone to complete you. It teaches you to stop needing someone to validate you. It teaches you how to enjoy your own company first, so that when you enter someone else's life, you're not a burden. They don't have to carry your self-worth. You already brought it with you. Seneca wrote that the wise person is content with themselves, but is also a friend to many. He didn't say the Stoic withdraws from life. He said the Stoic engages from a place of stability, not dependence. That's what solitude gives you. It makes you whole enough to be generous in your relationships. Let's look at it practically. When you've spent time alone, you know what matters to you. You know your values, your boundaries, your rhythm. You're not just following the crowd, not just agreeing to fit in, not just saying yes to avoid being alone. That self-awareness makes your relationships clearer, healthier, and more honest. You're not constantly seeking approval, so you can give authentic encouragement. You're not afraid of being alone, so you're not afraid of losing someone. You're not driven by insecurity, so you're not competing, comparing, or clinging. You're present, you're patient, you're powerful, and that kind of presence changes the quality of your relationships. Friends feel seen by you. Partners feel safe with you. Colleagues feel grounded around you. Because you're not reacting from need, you're responding from strength. But this doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you use your time alone, not just to avoid drama or rest from the noise, but to actually grow. To clarify what kind of person you want to be in someone else's life. To identify your unhealthy patterns and replace them. To become the kind of person you once wished would walk into the room. That's what solitude gives you. It's not distance, it's preparation. It's not avoidance, it's refinement. And when the time comes to connect, to love, to build community, you're ready. Not perfect, not above it all, just rooted. Just real. The world is full of people trying to fill emotional holes with other people. But the ones who stand out, the ones who love deeply without losing themselves, those are the ones who did the inner work first. And if you're single right now, this is your moment to do that work, to ask the hard questions, to build the habits, to become whole so that your future connections are fueled by overflow, not emptiness. So instead of seeing solitude as something that keeps you apart from people, start seeing it as something that prepares you for deeper, more authentic connection. Let it shape you into someone who enters every relationship not with need, but with presence, intention, and strength. Now let's move to the 9th advantage of the single life: facing and conquering fear. More specifically, the fear of being alone. This fear is quiet, subtle, and deeply rooted in the modern mind. It's not always spoken out loud, but it shows up everywhere. In the panic when your phone goes quiet. In the impulse to text someone just to feel connected. In the way you jump into relationships that don't align just to avoid the silence. But the Stoics believed something radical. To conquer a fear, you don't avoid it. You face it head on. You don't run from discomfort. You walk into it willingly. Seneca practiced going without luxuries, not because he was poor, but because he didn't want to be owned by the fear of poverty. Epictetus reminded his students that exile, illness, even death, these things could be faced without losing the self. And the fear of being alone. That's one of the most universal fears we carry. It touches our ego, our identity, our sense of worth. And yet, when you finally face it, when you stop running and actually sit in the quiet, something amazing happens. You find that it doesn't destroy you. In fact, it frees you. Because most of the fear we carry is built on illusions. Illusions that say you're not enough without someone next to you. Illusions that say your value increases with someone's affection. Illusions that say silence is dangerous and stillness is something to escape. But when you challenge those illusions, when you let yourself feel the emptiness and realize it doesn't define you, something breaks open. You begin to see that your fear was never about solitude. It was about facing yourself. And once you do, you become fearless. Not in the sense of never feeling anything, but in the sense that nothing owns you. You don't need noise to feel alive. You don't need someone else to make you feel lovable. You've faced the silence and you've found peace there. That peace, that unshakable presence, is what the Stoics called tranquility. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of courage. It's the confidence that no matter what leaves your life, you will remain whole, steady, unmoved, and that only comes from doing the work, from choosing solitude, from sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it, from letting the fear rise and not flinching, from learning that your own company is not a punishment, it's preparation. So if fear has been your silent companion, if you've lived with the anxiety of being alone, I want you to know something. You're not weak, you're human. But you're also capable of more than you know. And this season of singleness is your invitation to become fearless. Not because you'll never feel lonely, but because loneliness will no longer control you. And when you reach that place, when solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your sentence, you'll carry a strength the world can't touch. A steadiness that won't shake when someone leaves, when plans fall apart, when the path gets quiet. Because you'll know, deep in your bones, that you've already met the silence and you walked out stronger. Now, let's move into the 10th and final advantage of the single life. Choosing the single path with intention. Up until now, we've talked about how solitude gives you strength, clarity, discipline, creativity, and peace. But none of that matters if you still believe being alone is just a phase to get through. If you think of singleness as something you didn't choose, something that happened to you, something you're stuck in until someone rescues you, then you've already missed its power. But when you choose to be single, not out of fear, not out of pride, but out of deep intention, you flip the script completely. You step into a different energy. You're no longer waiting. You're no longer hoping to be picked. You're walking your path, fully awake, fully engaged, and fully in control. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that we should never wait on circumstances to make our lives whole. They believed in reasoned choice. They believed in acting according to nature and virtue, not emotion and pressure. They believed that the wise person chooses their path not because it's popular, but because it's right. And if you look around, very few people actually choose the single life. Most people drift into it. They feel embarrassed by it. They try to hide it. They treat it like the awkward in-between before the real life begins. But what if you flipped that? What if you embraced it fully? What if you said, "This isn't what I'm tolerating, this is what I'm building from"? Choosing singleness with intention means recognizing it as a sacred opportunity. It means waking up each day and deciding to make this season count. It means asking yourself what kind of person you want to be before you invite anyone else into your life. It means building a life so meaningful that anyone who enters it becomes an addition, not a necessity. You get to design your rhythm. You get to master your habits. You get to make decisions without compromise. You get to use every hour to build something that matters to you and to the world. You get to live without waiting. And this isn't about rejecting love. The Stoics weren't against connection, but they were radically against dependence. They knew that love born from weakness collapses. But love born from strength, it expands, it grows, it blesses everyone it touches. And it only grows from someone who has first learned how to walk alone and walk well. So I want to challenge you, if you're in a season of being single, claim it, own it. Stop apologizing for it, stop wishing it away. This isn't dead space. This is fertile ground. This isn't a delay, it's development. It's the time where your roots grow deep, where your mind sharpens, where your spirit strengthens. Don't waste it. Don't treat it casually. And definitely don't just survive it. Live it. Use it. Stretch it. Let it shape you. Because when the day comes that someone does walk alongside you, they won't be meeting a half-formed version of you. They'll meet someone full of vision, discipline, peace, and clarity. Someone who's already living their purpose, already walking in alignment, already overflowing. And if that never happens, if no one ever joins you on the road, you'll still have built something unshakable. You won't be alone. You'll be whole, which brings us to our final reflection: becoming whole alone. This is the core of everything we've talked about. Because at the end of the day, all the habits, all the discipline, all the philosophy, it's not about perfection. It's not about appearing strong. It's about being whole. Being someone who knows who they are. Someone who lives in integrity, who moves from purpose, who acts with intention. Someone who is not ruled by fear or loneliness or longing, but who is shaped by wisdom, forged in silence and anchored in self-respect. Wholeness isn't the absence of desire, it's the absence of dependence. You can still want love, connection, family, partnership. You can still open your heart, but you don't need it to feel alive. You don't need it to feel valuable. You've already discovered that in the mirror. You've already built it in your solitude. The Stoics believed that the good life, the virtuous life, was available to anyone who lived with reason and principle. That means it doesn't depend on your relationship status. It doesn't depend on what others think of you. It depends on how you live, what you choose, what you become in the quiet moments. So if you're alone right now, you are not lacking. You are not behind. You are in the perfect position to become someone rare, someone who walks with depth in a shallow world, someone who creates in a culture of consumption, someone who lives from within when everyone else is chasing what's outside. You are in the forge. And the choices you make here, how you spend your mornings, how you deal with your emotions, how you speak to yourself, how you use your time, they are shaping the person you will bring into every future relationship, every future opportunity, every future season. So choose wisely, build deeply, and trust the process. Because when you do, being alone stops feeling like a limitation. It starts feeling like liberation. You're not half a person waiting to be completed. You're a whole person discovering your strength. And that strength, the kind that's shaped in silence, tested in solitude, and proven in discipline, that's your superpower. Use it well.